Everybody's loading in. Let's see here. So we'll see how long this goes. We have crazy rain going on in our house here. So the lights have flashed a few times. So if we suddenly disappear, you'll know why. Like,
yeah.
we're gone.
It just rolled through here too.
Yeah, exactly.
We end up in Oz. Yeah.
Right, we'll know why. Yeah, I think so. So you should scoot this way. Scoot over so you can be on camera. There we go. So I think we're just letting the last couple of folks in. It's good to see everybody again.
Yay.
It's kind of nice to be out in the real world a little bit, but still, it's fun to see everybody this way again. It's great. Hi. Yeah.
All right.
So there's some crazy cat action going on in our background too, as the storm is completely making the cat crazy. So we'll see if he makes an appearance. Oh yeah.
All right.
All right, you think we're ready, Zoe? All right, everybody's on. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, and thanks for coming out to sit with us and to taste a little wine again on this at least rainy for us Thursday night.
Yeah.
I've got the what's happening at the farm and the current
AccuEd forecast.
Or so, current cast, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, just for those of you in central Maryland, just I hope everybody's safe. And we just had a tornado warning for the last half an hour or so with an enormous storm that came through. We were on the southern end of it here in Silver Spring, and our entire street is just running like a river. It's crazy. So I hope everybody was okay.
Floating down the street. Yeah. It's crazy.
Black Ankle just was a little bit north of that, so we got a little bit. Well, we got a hard rain, but nothing crazy like the crazy tornado warning areas. And we're hoping there's maybe going to get a little bit more tonight, but I think it might skirt by that as well. So that's good. So
that's good so far, yeah. And the forecast right now, if we get through this storm, I mean, we're going to get through one form or another. We'll get through. But after this, the forecast is for beautiful weather for the next certainly 5 to 8 days, and kind of even 10-day forecast. So of course things always change. That was the forecast also like 4 days ago. So who knows? Yeah, we'll see. But so far so good. So that seems great. People keep asking, is this going to be a good vintage? And of course my answer, if you know me, is always, of course it's going to be one of the best vintages ever. However, there's still a little time before I can be sure to be right on that. But we have started. So we are supposed to talk about Crumbling Rock today, but we thought we'd give a quick update on kind of the first, we have one toe in the water for harvest. But it's kind of an exciting toe because it is, we have started picking some Gruner Veltliner, but for the new chispa. So it's going to be only our second foray into making sparkling wine. But one of the fun things about sparkling wine is you pick the grapes really early. So we picked on Monday and Tuesday just a portion of the Gruner Veltliner to start the new vintage chispa. So that's pretty exciting. So we've got that in. Yep. That in the tank and already pressed and chilling and kind of getting ready to get fermenting in the next few days. And then today we picked Pinot Noir. So it's a little on the early end for that, but it's very fragile, and with this current weather, it seemed like time to bring it in. So we've got, what is that? 4% of the harvest in or something.
Yeah, so that's
a little tiny bit, but
6 tons we picked so far, yeah. And we'll probably be around 125.
All right, 3.5%. Pretty good. It's just every grape in the door is a grape that we don't have to worry about anymore too much. Yeah. So that's always exciting, anyways.
And these rains came at it. I mean, there's never for grape growers never a great time to have rain, but this is a pretty good time actually. We for most of the reds, they're not really vulnerable right now. They only get vulnerable when they get really ripe. So yeah, we have Chardonnay. I have a beautiful crop of Chardonnay hanging that we think is healthy enough, strong enough to hang through this, so we left it. We could have picked it and made a really nice wine this week, but we think we'll make an even better one next week. So, and the Albarino is hanging in almost right, looks beautiful, but Albarino is really tough. So that should be pretty good next week too. And the reds, sort of no problem. So it's a pretty good time to have it if we're going to have a bunch of crazy rain. We'll take it.
In the fall, yeah.
And now is the time where we love, from now on, we love the same weather that all of you love.
Right.
70 degrees and sunny, beautiful. In the summer, we don't care if it's hot and humid.
Right.
The vines are
the more miserable, the better.
they're fine with that. But right now, we love those beautiful 70-degree days, or whatever. It's nice and sunny, low humidity, fabulous. So we're hopeful. We'll see.
Yeah, so far. But we're
So
set
let's-
up pretty
let's go.
well, so that's great. All right, on to the task at hand.
On to the task at hand. So why are we here today again?
Crumbling Rock.
Oh yeah, that stuff. Yeah. I remember
So
that
here,
stuff.
I'll do the Vanna. And we have our fancy new camera, so tell us, I think you can see a lot better, right?
Yes.
Yes, you can actually tell. I have to have the wine. We have to be drinking the wine we say we're drinking because we can't be like, look, it's all blurry. No, it's a Crumbling Rock 2017, which so our plan is to talk a little bit about Crumbling Rock in general, how we approach it, how we blend it, and then 2017 in particular, and then of course, as always, answer any questions people have. So.
Yeah.
Let us know. Don't be shy if you've got questions to ask. So. Start by tasting it so people can try. I know nobody would taste before we gave them the green light.
Wow. It smells so yum.
Yeah.
So yum.
You can't hear us. It's probably because there's a giant storm blowing through. Shoot. All right. I'll try to talk slowly. And I don't know.
Hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Check.
The camera is going because I can. Connection. Let's see. Can you still not hear us? Like, wave your hands if you hear us. People hear us. All right, so that's enough. We're gonna worry about it. It's changed at microphone. I think it's probably better.
Now we can't see you.
You can't see us?
Not on
Oh,
my
how bizarre. Oh my God. Start video. I don't.
Turn
Oh, you know what? I was meant. Can you see us now?
You're back.
I was trying to check on the camera and I turned it off. Sorry. It's not. Back to Crumbling Rock. You're not hearing? Your speaker's not working.
Sarah,
we
you're
are. We got you. Came back. We got you back.
we can. You're
Okay,
good.
good. All right. Sorry. This is like this is all we ever do. Technical problems. Okay, we're back. We're going to assume we're back.
I'm not gonna touch anything.
We'll just be fearless. Go check
Great.
Crumbling Rock.
So Crumbling Rock. Let's talk about 2017 first. So 2017 was we often say when people ask us in the middle of the year, how's this year been so far? We say, well, yeah, but it's the end of the year that really makes it vintage. And so 2017 is a classic example of that. Very normal sort of year, I guess. A little bit on the warm side, but regular rains and normal summer kind of in Maryland. And then in September, we got beautiful weather. We got, I was talking about a few minutes ago, 75 and sunny. I think it rained once during the month, no hurricanes, not it. Just really, really nice, ripening weather. And it's one of those years where our stress level is much lower because we could just pick when we wanted to. We'd say, well, do you think it's ready to pick? And it would be Tuesday. Well, no, let's wait till Thursday. I think it'll be a little bit better and not have to work. Like Sarah talked about with the that we just picked this year, we would have loved to let it another 3-4 days, but we were just scared of this, and you better make it go and have something slightly less right than you want and something that's right. So we had none of those problems in 2017. Just a really nice year. We also had a nice balance do is make the wine a little bit lower alcohol level than a lot of the wines from the more sunny regions. So we'd like to be in the 13s if we can. Low 14s is okay, but not anything higher than that. And what we ended up with that year was Cabernet Francs and Petit Verdot, which were quite high in alcohol. They would have given us 14.5, 14.7 even. But the Cabernet Sauvignon came in at 12, 12.5, which was perfect. So the reason we blend is we can get a certain balance out of that. And it's one of the reasons we'll talk about the blend in a few minutes, but it's got more Cabernet Sauvignon than it usually does in it. And that's it's excellent. It's something that really that really is good for us. It should stop. It's really garbled.
That's just the substance.
That's the substance.
I just kicked all our kids off Wi-Fi because I think there was a little Wi-Fi happening. Is it better now? Getting better now.
Yeah,
Like
now.
storm, it's not. It's just like our storm.
Yeah.
I keep doing this.
Storm's crazy, huh?
No, horrible. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I'm like, we're gonna start again. All right.
It's the microphone.
All right, any better?
No.
Turn off your video and stay with audio only.
You do that? Use a
Sorry.
different speaker.
My bad. We are at my technical limits. I turn everything else off on my thing. All right, you keep talking. You guys, Zoe's going to text us. I'm going to go around my computer.
Speaker on.
You guys turn off the TV, please. Whatever's making noise, get off. There we go. Better? Still terrible? I'm shutting it. What does that say?
Sarah, it's better.
Okay. Is it better? Okay, sorry. I'll stop. Okay.
Yep.
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, we're going to just proceed and then just like wave your arms if we're bad again. Sorry. Okay. I really think it's just the weather blowing by because it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to start back about Crumbling Rock?
Okay,
17.
2000
Let's relive 2017 because it was a good year.
All right,
We could live it twice.
I'll do the quick version. 2017, really kind of normal year, a little bit warmer than usual until September rolled around. And then we had a beautiful September, one or maybe two rains in all of September and early October, just about right for what we want. And low humidity, lots of sun, beautiful ripening weather. The kind of weather that allows us to decide to pick on, well, Tuesday, or maybe we should wait till Wednesday, maybe we should wait another day, try to pick at absolutely the perfect moment rather than some years where we have to pick a few days early because of weather or a few days late, which is even worse because of weather. So 17 was great in that way. The alcohol levels are something we think about a lot in our wines, and we like it to be in the 13s if we can. Low 14s is okay. High 14s starts to get a little heavy, we think, and not as food friendly. And
We can't drink as much.
and much more costly. So that kind of year gave us some Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot and even some Merlot, which was quite higher in alcohol than we'd like. 14.5, even 14.8, somewhere in there, potential alcohol for those. But the Cabernet Sauvignon luckily came in at much lower alcohol levels, 12.5, 12.7, somewhere in there. So when we blend it together, we get something right in the 13s, what we're shooting for. So another of the reasons that we love blending is it allows us to get the kind of style and the kind of feel that we want from the wine. So 17, I remember at the time thinking, wow, this may be the best year we've had, or close. 13 was great, 16 was great, 15 was right there, maybe not quite as good, but we thought this is a wonderful, wonderful year, at least until 19 came along, which was another fantastic year. So yeah, this is the first of a bunch of 2017s that we're going to be able to release. We made some really nice wines, I think, from the 17s. Any of you have had tried the, well, a little bit, I think, got into some of this, the Slate 6. So there's possibly some in that, but a lot of the other ones have not been released yet. So waiting for that. You want to talk Crumbling Rock?
Oh, I hear we're gargled again. We're garbled again.
No.
Well,
You talk here.
we're going to try. I'm going to try talking and then we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what else to do.
You're perfect right now. You're perfect.
You're good.
We're good. All right. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I'm going with it.
She's going to get a big head now.
I'm
You
perfect.
can't tell her things like that.
So,
Stop.
all right. It's just weird. I really think it's, anyway, whatever. So, so blending, I think just in general, one of the questions people ask us is, how do you decide what is a rolling hills, what's an estate, what's a crumbling rock, and how does that process work? So, I just want to walk through OIC. It's going downhill again. Well, the blending process is basically, we don't know any given wine. We don't know where it's going to end up until probably 4 months before it goes into the bottle. And that is because we, every grape that comes in, we try to pick, we basically try to get everything as ripe as we can based on what the weather's doing, what the season's doing. And so we'll bring everything in and then we'll go through the fermentation process and the barreling process. Again, just trying to say for that grape, for that lot, what do we think the best, what do we think how can we make this wine as good as we can? And we don't really, with the exception of something like pulling some wine out to make rosé, we'll treat that differently. Or the wines that we're going to go to Passeggiata, where we will treat that differently in the actual fermentation process. We don't really, we don't do anything in the winemaking process to say, like, okay, this guy's going to be a crumbling rock. It's just really what is the best treatment that we think we have for that. Then when we so we're everyone's except us. But I guess it's out there. Anyway, so when we sit down to blend is really when the different wine end up in different pieces. So we okay. So when we sit down to blend is when we're going to sit down. That's when the wines get categorized into where they go. So, and that's why you can see sometimes when you look at the back labels, you might have a whole bunch of our vintages. The blends shift like crazy. And you know, people will ask us all the time, what's the cornerstone of Crumbling Rock? What's the backbone of Crumbling Rock? And the answer is it just depends on the year. It really makes a huge difference. So, and that is, I think it's one of the, I don't know, fun sides or downsides of living in a place with such varied weather. One season is really different from another, which means that in one year, the weather, you know, at budding might have been great for Petit Verdot and then not so great when the Cabernet Sauvignon was blooming. Or the weather, you know, when we hit veraison, when the grapes start going from really green to starting to pick up color, might have been perfect for Cab Sauv that year and not as good for Petit Verdot. And so it's hard even to predict, even though we watch the weather like crazy and try to follow the vintages like crazy. It's hard to predict early on which grapes are going to perform better throughout the growing season because there's so many different variables and because they're also staggered. But by the time we pick them, we usually have a pretty good sense of how good the grapes are going to be. Oh yeah, I would say. Yeah. So, you know, as they come in the door, again, it's not to say we're like, oh, I'm sure this lot will be in a state, or I'm sure this one would end up in a Rolling Hills or a Viento, but we tend to have a sense of like, oh, this is going to be good, or oh, we're going to struggle with this one a little bit and have to work a little harder on it. So that can happen pretty early on in the winemaking process. But really, the final cut is not made until much, much later. So the wines are coming in now. We go through the whole fermentation process now. Then they will go into barrels in, usually everything's barreled by Thanksgiving. So, you know, basically the end of November, we pretty much have finished the active winemaking, I suppose you would say. And then they're going to stay in barrel for the next year and a half. And those wines, we do a little stirring, we do a little testing, you know, we audit the sulfur levels, we do some things along the way. But for the most part, the wines just kind of sit and do their barrel magic, which I know we've talked about barrels before. They kind of do that kind of thing until we get ready to blend. And then the blending time is generally end of January, early February of the year, 2 years after the vintage date. So this we blended, I know, in February of 2019. That's when we actually made this blend. So the wine had been picked about 18 months ahead of time, or the grapes had been picked. You want to talk and see if they can hear you?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, it's like because my voice is so
I hope you guys
loud.
can hear. So, yeah, so let me talk a little bit about how our blending is different. It's blending in general, but Crumbling Rock is very, is sort of the core of a lot of our blending. So I guess we're talking about that because it really pertains to this wine. We blend late. I know we have a lot of friends in the wine industry. There are some who decide during fermentation which wines are going where. They know which ones are going to be their reserves and which ones are not. We don't do that, but I guess partly because we don't think we know, and partly because we feel like the wines change as they age. That's not very common, but it does happen. We also know quite a few people, and much more common is they blend in the winter after the vintage. So they would taste through all the different lots of wine and blend a Crumbling Rock out of them, let's say, or decide what they want to blend, and then actually do the blending. They'll what's called rack the wine out of the barrels. You either pump or pour or somehow get siphon the wine out of the barrels, giving them some air, which helps at that point usually to help them age better. And they blend them, and then they'll put them back into barrels as Crumbling Rock and age them for another year as Crumbling Rock. We don't do that. We leave all of our barrels for 18 months or more, sometimes 20, separate. And we will not even blend them until they've been in barrel for 14 months. It's usually January of the following year when we blend. We find some of those wines just change. The things that we love 3 months after the vintage are not the same things we love 15 months after the vintage. They have their own life. They have their own way of doing things. And so we want to wait as long as we can before we decide what it is we want to blend together. So I think we're in the minority in doing that, in waiting that long to do it, but we think it works for us.
Yeah, I mean, and again, as Ed said, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a question of where you feel like you're going to have the most. We feel like we want the most flexibility, I guess, in terms of our ingredients, and we think of the different wine portions as kind of the ingredients. Yeah.
And so there's some questions about the actual blend of this wine. It's 36% Cabernet Sauvignon, which is always a good sign, I think, for us. When in most years we think we can get Cabernet Sauvignon ripe, and when we can, it often makes the backbone of a wine like Crumbling Rock because it's got such great length, because it's got such finesse. The more Cabernet Sauvignon we get in, the more it's the kind of wine that Sarah and I at least are going to love. Whether everyone agrees with us or not, it's what we love in a wine. To give an example of the barrel, we also blend barrel by barrel, or at least barrel lot by barrel lot. We'll put most of the wines that are in used barrels from one lot together and taste them as one, but the new barrels we always taste separately. And so as an example, this Crumbling Rock, I think we made 13, not counting Syrah. We made, or Pinot Noir, which won't go into Crumbling Rock. We made 13 different red wines out of the Bordeaux varieties in 2017. And this Crumbling Rock has, I think, 10 of those 13 lots. Now, there's not a single one of those lots that went all into Crumbling Rock.
Right.
3 barrels went here, a couple of barrels went into the Rolling Hills, some went into the Slate. It goes all over the place, and we really do find that variance somewhat in how the barrels. Either it's the barrel itself. We don't really know. It's the barrel itself, or the wine that happened to get in there or did something differently.
Yeah.
Who really knows what's really going on with this stuff? But they're certainly different. And to build these different wines, we are often stealing things from the same piles and putting them together. It's kind of funny.
So when Ed talks about the 13 wines we made, we are talking about, Cabernet Franc from the top of the hill, Cabernet Franc from the bottom of the hill, not wines that got in the bottle, but sort of ingredients. Yeah. But then those ingredients are sliced into different parts. So we had, say the Cabernet Franc, for instance, would have been put into, or I'll take the Cabernet Franc from the lower part of the hill on the east side. That went into, I think, 4 different kinds of new barrels and then some used barrels. So that one lot had 5 different segments. And so each of the 13 has probably 4 or 5 parts. And then those end up getting kind of parceled around. So it may be, and again, we work with a bunch of different coopers and use a bunch of different barrels, because one year the Cabernet Francs will show beautifully in an Orion barrel, and then the next year they'll show much better in a Sylvain barrel or a Sanso barrel. It's unclear why there are, over, we've done this now, this is our 11th, I think, vintage. We start to see some trends, but the best learning we have is just keep mixing it up, and we're gonna see the best results, rather than saying like, oh, it has to be this complete combination. So that kind of thing.
Sarah missed 5 years. I had 5 more years than you. 16 vintages, I think.
16.
2005 to 2020.
Oh, I see. I just have, you're aging us, but you're right. I'm way behind. So I want to pull in some questions. I see, Kurt Merck-Paul, you had asked about, have you ever thought of doing hey guys, can you do that outside, please? Oh my God, our kids are so loud, sorry. Have you ever thought of doing a non-vintage blend? And the answer is yes. That's what, like the slates and the feldspars, those are basically our non-vintage Crumbling Rocks. So those are the wines that, and that's the reason that you'll see them with a number instead of a vintage date, is because for those wines, we really can go crazy pulling together all kinds of different vintages. And so the rule is you can have up to 15% from another vintage in something and still give it the vintage year. So if you want to call something 2017, it can have 15% of some other year in it. But when we start getting into 20% or 30% or pulling wine from 3 different years, that's when you start seeing things. That's why we have slate and why we have feldspar. Passeggiata, sometimes we end up doing the same way, so that we can mix our vintages at will. So, and then I think the tangent to that was, do we have a favorite vintage? Hard to say. I would say 2006 because it was the first one, but I know that's not what you're asking. It's like, oh, we did it, But in terms of actual wine, you have a favorite vintage?
I don't know. Not really. I know that's a cop out. Sorry, but there's so many wines I remember from different places. I remember the 2015 M being one of my favorite wines we ever made. I remember the 13 Leafstone and Phyllite just being, I love them. The 2006 Crumbling Rock, you can't really, that was
it was a good wine too, but I just part of it's just like sentimental value.
And that's just the reds. Having some of the Albarenos and Chardonnays and things that I've loved over the years have been great as well. So,
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
develop over time. So,
So this wine, as Sarah's looking at the question things, this wine, I think it's the aromas are beautiful. I mentioned how I
Glasses
think
are
it's
small.
the glasses are too small.
all these technical
Yeah.
difficulties, I've drank my whole glass.
The aromas are beautiful and very young. I think
Yeah.
it's a little tannic still. Not in a bad way. With food, it would be great, but I would keep it for another couple of years because I think it's going to soften beautifully and even plump up a little bit and be really nice. What I really like about it is the length that it has. It just has a great long palate with it, which is indicative, I think, of that Cabernet Sauvignon really gives it that. If you think of the length, the palate length of different grapes, and there's exceptions to this, but they mostly have a certain length in them, and Cabernet Sauvignon is the king of the longest palate that there is, and probably Petit Verdot is the opposite, is the shortest of the palate grapes, but it has other wonderful things about it. So that's why we end up blending to get sort of best of both worlds. So it's great.
That's great.
Let's see. Is it all free run juice or is there pressed juice as well? Great question.
Yes, there is pressed juice. there is actually a little bit of 2016. Part of our 15% is 2016, but pressed juice. And I think there was 1 barrel of 17 press wine in this as well. And the press wines are, the sort of value of them is they tend to be very dense and very rich. They can be super tannic. So it's not uncommon for us to take a press wine and want to age it a little longer. So one of the things that happens with barrel aging is you can take this really intense wine and you kind of smooth out some of the roughness by just time in barrel and all the kind of magic that's happening in barrel. So often in any vintage, there'll be a little bit of the vintage before barrel put in there. Oh my God, that was the most convoluted sentence, but I think you could probably follow some. So it's not unusual to have wine from the previous vintage that was press wine in the next vintage. Anyway.
Yeah, well, we do that. We have, so there's some 30-month barrel aged in here, a little bit, not much. Yeah, interesting.
And that again is one of the reasons that we love the non-vintage wines like the Feldspars and the Slates. Those tend to have a lot of the press wines, so the wines that have spent the most time with the seeds and skins. But we've let them age in barrel for a while, so they get some of that softening and kind of smoothing out over time. But then we often want to mix them with some younger wine, so you still have some kind of upfront fruitiness and some kind of recognizable fruit character. So that's why we like to just play with all the different years and the different vintages and all that kind of thing.
Yep. So there's a question that one about tasting the 2016. Somebody's having, excellent, 2016 Crumbling Rock.
Yeah. And
the aroma is quite leathery, more like a Bordeaux than a big fruit-forward California wine. Is that what you're going for? Well, we love that. Thank you for that feedback. It's excellent. I don't know that we can control that. But I know we're trying to make wine in more the Bordeaux model than the California model. So maybe that's why. I can't really tell you why a lot of the California wines, and I sort of agree, a lot of them, even 10 years old, tend to age differently than a Bordeaux would out of the same grapes. I do know, I remember, and I have a few bottles left of wines from the early 90s in California. And those age very differently. They were there's a sort of a break point in the mid 90s, about 95 or so, when the style in California really changed. They were making, 13% alcohol wines, and they started slowly or not so slowly moving toward making 15% alcohol wines that were very fruit forward and very sort of powerful. Before that, they made more typically restrained sort of Bordeaux-like wines. And those wines, I remember aging. We still have we had 94 Insignia a few months ago, Phelps Insignia, a wonderful wine from 94, and it aged beautifully. You would thought it was an old Bordeaux. It just had all of those tobacco things and you know, all that
More
leathery
leather,
stuff.
smoke, right?
The
Wood,
smoke,
but gentle.
lead
Yeah.
pencil, all that kind of stuff going on. Don't know what's happening. Even the Californians are not totally sure. Is it a style thing or is it a climate change thing? It's unclear, but the wines have definitely changed. And the wines we're making are much more like the old California style or the today Bordeaux style. So, yeah.
So just to roll back a little, and I apologize, we got on this whole discussion of press wine with no explanation of what we were talking about. So when we talk about free run and press, I just want to go back and explain what that was. So the last conversation will make more sense. When we, for red wines, what goes into the tank is the whole berry. So we take them off, we take the grapes off the stems, but the whole little grape goes into the tank. And so you have juice and skin and pulp, kind of the gooey bits, and then the seeds are all in the tank. And then during the fermentation process, that juice comes loose. I mean, it breaks loose for the most part, and you start to get, you know, you start out with this big cluster of grapes and a little bit of juice. And by the end, there's kind of mostly juice floating around the tank, but still the skins and the pulp are still in there. So when we finish either at the end of fermentation or basically whenever we decide that we have pulled as much interest out of the skins as we're going to get, we've kind of extracted what we want from the skins. And then, and the juice starts out completely clear. So all of the color in the wine and many of the interesting flavors and textures and kind of interesting components of a red wine are sitting in the skins. So a huge piece of our winemaking process is to get the good stuff out of the skins. There's also fermentation happening. I mean, there's just the fact of turning sugar into alcohol or having yeast consume the sugar and create alcohol. But a lot of what we care about is that, but also this kind of extraction from the skin. So when we decide that we have gotten what we want out of the skins, we literally open the valve. We have a, hose to catch it, but we see how much of the free juice will just flow out of the tank. And we call it free run, and it's just because it will run freely on its own. So it's like when we open the little handle, how much can just come out with no help. And that is usually about 85% of the total volume of what's in there. And once that's all drained through, maybe even 90%, it depends on the grape and depends on the year. So once all that free run juice has run out of the tank, then we actually open the big square door on the tank. And if you've been down to the winery, you'll know what we're talking about, but there's a door that's about this big. We open that up, and what's left in there is this kind of spongy cake, which consists of the skins and the pulp and the seeds, and then a little bit of juice that has gotten trapped in there. And so that pumice, basically, it's called, we shovel it out, and we actually get to climb in the tanks and shovel it out, which is my favorite job because you're inside the wine tank breathing all the wine fumes. We shovel that out, and then that goes into a press. And our press, again, if you've been in the winery, it looks like a rocket ship lying outside. It's this huge silver tube, and it has basically a giant balloon inside that's all scrunched up, and you fill the cylinder with the grapes with a little bit of juice left, or wine at this point left in them, and then seal up that door. And then very slowly we force air into the big balloon, and as it expands and expands and expands, it squishes the last little bits of juice out, and that's a press. There are many different kinds of presses. The old, more traditional, kind of more romantic style ones look like a giant basket with a big steel plate that comes and squishes them down, and then the juice would run out of the sides. We have one of those too, but it's a lot less efficient. We don't use it as often. So that wine that has come out once you've pressed it is what we call press wine. And so it has some different characteristics than the free run wine. It's much the same, but because it is the juice that has spent the most time kind of right in contact with the skins and the seeds, it tends to be much more tannic because it has picked that tannin up from the skins and seeds. It tends to be very concentrated and very rich, but sometimes a little harsh because, again, some kind of more astringent, more harsh flavors are in those skins and seeds. So it gets saved in barrel, but separately. And what it needs is a little more time to kind of smooth off its rough edges. So that's why often we'll use our pressed wine, and we just call it pressed wine. We will use that, but we'll give it 2 years in barrel or 3 years in barrel, because that time in barrel lets the tannin chains actually grow and grow over time. And weirdly, the bigger they get, the less your mouth is able to perceive them. They start to kind of flow over your sense receptors. So they kind of soften out over time. And that's in wine in general. When people talk about tannin smoothing out or softening out, it's because these tannin chains are getting longer and they become less perceptible, noticeable. Anyway, so that's a long answer to that way back. Now we're going to go back. I hope that answered your question well enough.
That's a good one.
We're going to go back through.
So another thing that we I noticed looking back through our notes of 2017 is that was one of the first years that we did what was called extended maceration on some of these. So the first probably, I don't know, 10 vintages or so that we made at Black Ankle, we would tend to ferment our red grapes until all the sugar was gone, and they would stop fermenting, and then we would run the free runoff. We decided I'm not sure exactly, it was started in 15, we did a little bit, and then some in 16, and then 17, I think we did everything, where we started doing what's called extended maceration. So after the fermentation was done, we did not run the free runoff. We left all the juice on the skins, in the tank, on the skins. And what you're doing when you do that is it tends to add some richness to the wines, which we want. But it also adds some astringency slowly to the wines. So you have to be very, very careful how long you do it for, because you want to balance. You don't want astringency, but you do want richness, and all of that.
So astringency it's one of those weird wine words. It's kind of like sharpness or harshness. It's tied to tannin,
like sandpaper on your tongue, sort of.
Yeah, it can feel like a physical roughness. It can feel like sourness, sort of, or bitterness. It's one of those words we throw around all the time because then we kind of start to have a sense of what it means. But and it's something that will soften over time and smooth out over time. But you need a little bit kind of to have balance and kind of to make it all hold together. But you don't want too much. So. I'm always the footnote on what the wine words mean. What do the wine words mean?
And practically what that means is that we used to have we would load a tank and maybe have a cold soak for a little bit and then go through fermentation and then run it off. And the wine and the skins would be together for maybe 15 days or so. This one was together for, I think 30 some odd, 33 days. So we left it for another 2 weeks with the skins. And if you ever if we ever get to do wine tours again in the winery, and during harvest, you see these little bottles on the tank, right on top of the tank doors. Those are usually a bottle of the wine from 3 days ago, 2 days ago, yesterday. And then we can go through and taste today's versus 3 days ago and see how that wine's evolving. And if we start getting a hint of too much astringency, too much harshness, I guess, off it comes. And that's the time to run the free runoff.
This is one of those classic, many of you have heard me talk about the early days and how we were trying to learn to make wine and working with Lucien, our consultant, who's so wonderful and helpful. And I just remember him saying, well, you must take the wine off the skins just before it starts to become bitter. I'm like, great. If I knew what was happening tomorrow, like I would be way better off. So in many ways, right, I wouldn't be working at all. But what we have learned with our little bottles is if you taste every day and you start to see the trend, you have a sense of when you are at the point of just before it becomes bitter, because you get a little hint of it and you know. But it is one of those things I remember thinking, how do I know just before? Anyway, so, and I do see that back to press wine, my favorite topic today was, I was picturing I Love Lucy. So the I Love Lucy part happens even before this. That's when the grapes are first going in the tank, we have what's called a crusher. So right when you take the berries off the stems, sometimes you need to crack open the berries. And that's before they even go into the tank to ferment. And that's the I Love Lucy scene. They're stomping on them, and that kind of gets the juice flowing. I kind of skipped that over in my explanation when I said, oh, the juice starts to flow. We no longer do it with our feet. We have a machine that helps us do that, but that's basically what's happening there. So early stage of winemaking.
Okay, so there's a question for Phil, which says, would you consider partial whole cluster fermentation for Syrah or Pinot? We have done that with Pinot. We did it with the 2000, the 17, I think, maybe it was the 19 Pinot. We've experimented with it on the Pinot. On the Syrah, we've thought about it. Most of the winemakers that we've talked to in the Rhone have gone away from it. So we're less likely to try it. In Burgundy, it's done quite a bit with Pinot, and so you get some structure. Pinot does not have very much of its own tannin or its own structure. So if you put the stems in there, you actually get, and the stems are not particularly stemmy of Pinot for some reason. They're actually kind of neutral. So you get some more tannin actually out of the actual stems, and it creates some structure for the wine. We tasted some actually crazy stemmy Pinot stuff when we were in Burgundy, and it was really good. I liked it. Right. So yeah, we did try that, and we may do some of that as well.
So when we talk about something tasting stemmy, it's literally like tasting like it's kind of tasting like a leaf, or you get like a real kind of like pepperiness, even like a green pepper mixed with black pepper, like green pepper, like bell pepper, but not terribly ripe green pepper, I guess. I'm trying to explain like what stemminess tastes like. So it's kind of a weird sensation. So, but again, like a lot of things in wine, a little bit of something that sounds really gross can add some interest.
Yeah.
But,
and for Crumbling Rock, which is made out of the Bordeaux varieties, those varieties, the grapes, the skins and the seeds have very nice tannins in them already. So they have great structure. You don't really need the stems. And if you ever chewed on a Cabernet Franc stem, you would never, ever put one in a tank.
Put one in your tank.
No, thank you.
In fact, we have a machine that takes the berries off the stems, and then we go back because it misses a few, and we very carefully pull them out. We want to get as few of those into the tank as possible, because they're not adding anything that we want to have in, I guess.
Yeah, I've tasted some Virginia winemakers are experimenting with putting stems in Cabernet Franc.
Yeah.
I got a chance to taste a couple of those, and no thanks.
Not
Experiments.
It's just experimental phase, but
I love the fact that they did the experiment, but I'm not going to repeat it.
We're not there yet.
So but for varieties like Pinot and Syrah, which don't have particularly herbaceous, whatever you call it, green, sort of bell peppery kind of stems, and that could use a little backbone, like it's an interesting idea. Another thing we have, we're on Syrah instead of Crumbling Rock, but another thing we have tried that is done sometimes in the Rhone Valley with Syrah to give it more backbone and more color is to actually put Viognier in.
I know, that was my crazy trick.
2, 3, 4% Viognier, white grapes in with the Syrah, and apparently I'm not the technical guy, but apparently there's some compound in Viognier skins which fixes color, fixes in the sense of
like chemically binds to make it more stable.
So you put 2, 3, 4% Viognier, and you actually get a darker wine, which is really weird, but apparently you do. And we have tried that.
We've done it with the
once or twice.
skins a few times. Yeah.
It didn't seem to do much either way.
Yeah, it's tricky for us because we do not usually pick them at quite the same time. So the only way we could do it with the skins was to press the Viognier and then freeze some skins and then hold them until we were making the Syrah, and it was okay, but it didn't really feel like it added enough to make it kind of worthwhile. So anyway, but it's kind of a thing. Do you want to try to talk about that? And
and Sharon said you drinking the 2013 Crumbling Rock, and it's aged beautifully. Yay, that's great.
Sharon, how's your knee? I'm impressed. I think if my memory serves, you had knee surgery like 3 days ago. So I'm very impressed that you're on here. We're off camera, so we can't see your answer, but I hope you're doing well.
I think 17 is going to age a lot like 13 in a lot of ways. So
that's great.
It's great.
That's great. You want to talk about the Feldspar 4?
How does it compare to Crumbling Rock? Feldspar 4.
This was a really old question, Linda. I hope you're still there. We didn't forget you. Sometimes we miss them. We get on a tangent.
I'm trying to remember Feldspar 4. There's so many ones. It's going to be Feldspar 4 is going to be a little richer and a little bit more expressive. Crumbling Rock is going to be longer, more finesse. Different strokes for different folks, really. That's why we blend them that way. They're different, but not worse or better. There's a lot more power, I guess, in the Feldspar than there will be in Crumbling Rock. Crumbling Rock, we like to be a little bit delicate is the wrong word, but concentrated without being heavy, I think is our sort of goal for Crumbling Rock. We're willing with slate or feldspar to be a little heavier and a little more concentrated. That's okay.
Right.
So,
yeah. I think we've covered most of our questions. Oh, there's another one. Oh, no surgery. That's why you can drink. Phew.
Oh, no.
Sorry. Anyway, I hope you're still doing all right. I mean, I'm not judging any situations, but I'm glad you're okay. I think we've covered our basics for questions. So we're down to the wire here in terms of time. I know we lost a little in the beginning with our technical situation. I think it really was the storm because I think we're back. What do you have? I have some
one more question we had was next time Lucienne's in town, will you join us for half hour? So Lucien should normally be coming this week, next week, the week after, but with COVID, he can't come, both because he's I think 65 now and is in a group that shouldn't be running around traveling to different places in the world and things, and partly because I think he said he was not sure they would let him back into France, that it might take him 2 weeks to get back home because he'd been in the US. So we just put off his fall visit, and so he should be back in January. We'll ask him.
We'll try. He's a little shy. He does not realize what a rock star he is in our world. So we have had him when we've done some wine dinners. We've had him there or once in a while, and he's kind of like, why? What? I'm really, no, you don't understand. We talk about you all the time and how how cool you are and what you know. And he's very, very self-effacing, very kind of low key in demeanor. So we might be able to talk him into it, but I think he'd sort of think, what you can answer these questions. You don't need me or whatever. Anyway, but he is a lot of fun. So maybe he could join from France. I don't know. We could try to figure it out. So we'll see how it all works. But yeah, he is, as you know, because we invoke him constantly. He really has been a huge help to us.
He's been great.
And in many ways along the way. So there was a question way back about what is the vintage that we learned the most or that was the most challenging and we learned the most from, or something like that. And have we learned the lessons?
Well, I could go the opposite way. We didn't learn much from 17.
I was going to say it's always the rough years. Yeah.
We learned a lot. We learned a lot from 11.
I think
we learned, learned tough lessons to learn. But we learned a lot from 18.
So I mean, yeah. So early years for sure, just 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, just really having any idea how to make wine and what to do and the very basics. And then it's really the challenging years. So when we're dealing with fruit that is less ripe than we'd like, or more ripe than we'd like, or a little has some rotten areas, or something like that, we start to learn. We learn a lot more. And I think we have we learned every lesson? Probably not as many as we should have, but I think a lot. I mean, you do really start to figure out, start to get a sense of everything that we do have rattling around there as far as how to make wine and what tricks we have up our sleeves. So I guess the more challenging years are always the one where we learn the most, but the nice years are the most fun. We learn plenty in those years about how to enjoy it. So
yeah, I'm over learning. I'd like some really easy finishes. Thank you very much.
We're always coming up with some new plan. Someone asked also about planting new grape varieties. So really, once we put the grapes in, they should survive. Basically outlive us more or less. They should survive, maybe not quite, but another 40, 50 years. So for the most part at Black Ankle, we are not considering planting new varieties rather. However, there are a few exceptions. So one is we do have a block of Cabernet Franc, which is way at the top of the hill. And for one reason or another, we just have never been very happy with the wines. And I think there's maybe some virus in the rootstock, which is common enough in grapevines, but sometimes it matters more or less. So this year we were doing some field grafting. So where we're cutting the root and putting a different top on top to decide the grape variety. And there we did cut off all the Cabernet Franc. Just in this one section, we still have a lot of Cabernet Franc, just this one little block. And we put in Sauvignon Blanc. So it can happen. So we'll see. It'll be 2 more years before we know whether that was a good idea.
Yeah.
But so far they look pretty good. And it's very funny because it's this huge fat trunk and like these little tiny shoots sticking on top because it's like the baby's on top of the big vine. So, so who knows? So quick updates on Live Edge coming along. We're up to 25 acres there. The trellis is in for the most part. The deer fence went up last year, so the vines are in much better shape than they were last year at this time. And so far so good. We've been really happy. We did the planting by hand with our own crew this year, and we've been very happy with the results of that. We did a little bit of field grafting, and then mostly just vines that had already been grafted, so that were kind of in their whole. We'll talk more about grafting next month. It'll be our hook for next month, so you have to go back. But for the most part, those vines seem to be good. So we've seen consistency, and it's early days. We don't have fruit yet, but you can tell a lot by how evenly and how well the vines grow, even in the first few years. And so far, we're really happy with what we're seeing there. So that's good.
Yep.
And then as far as longer term, we're really in the design phase for winery and tasting room and all that kind of thing. So early days on all of that. Our current estimated opening date is 2025. So, just don't think too much about it. But we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Did I miss? Okay, so I have a few, all my housekeeping. I'm always in charge of housekeeping. So I think we've covered this before, but we are open at the tasting room for anybody who wants to come out, and we are all reservations, and we are only open outside. So that is as much as I understand this virus, the more time you spend outside, the safer you are. So we are 100% outside, which means if it rains, we have people sit out in the rain. We will serve you in the rain, but you may not want to come if it's a rainy day. If it's blazing hot, it's all outside. So
it's in the shade.
But we have a lot of shade. The shade sales are the whole shade project. We officially got the last railing in place, I think, so that's ready to go. So you can, of course, the website is your best bet. And I will say, sometimes people want to come out and they see that the reservations are all sold out or full. We do usually try to keep a little stash. So if you have a day that you really want to come out and it looks booked, just send us a note. And chances are pretty good that that we'll be able to squeeze you in. So it's better to do that than just give up on us. So we usually we're good. And if it's going to rain or something, we'll just reschedule you. We can always figure that out. So that is, and then we are still in kind of working on some fun projects. So I guess next Saturday is second Saturday. So that is our wine club Saturday. And again, we are all reservations for that. So if you want to come, just make your reservation. And you probably need to do that sooner rather than later because those may fill out. But again, we could probably squeeze you in, but sooner the better for that. And I think David Foreman is playing, and it's Hardecue, I believe. We have a food truck, so those days have been fun. And again, we're super careful about staggering the reservations and not having a lot of people come at once and spreading you out. So that is a question we get a lot, like, how come I couldn't get a reservation at this time, but no one's here? It's because we want to make sure that we let people come in slowly, so we have as few people lined up at any given time as possible. And then we are working on a couple of dinner plans. So one is the crab cakes are coming back. They're going to be just like last time, only for carryout, because just the logistics of that work the best. But it should be, I think we went over, I think it's the same, pretty much the same menu. Because we liked it and because I didn't get to vote on the dessert, so I got the chocolate cake again. So
I'm gonna trace late.
if you want to come and pick up your crab cake and then stay for a while, you can. I mean, the crab cake won't be it'll be cold, so you'll want to eat it at home, but just make a reservation if you do decide you're gonna do that. And Brick and Fire Pizza, Rick, I know they're on the list. I don't know when. Zoe's figuring it out. Oh, that's great. So we will have them again. And then we are working on a fun Crumbling Rock 17 wine dinner. So again, the times being what they are, we're not going to have a big sit down courses where we serve you one after the other indoor event because we just don't feel like we're ready for that. But we have been working with, I hope it says his name right, Ty Strain, who was most recently at Momofuku, great chef in the area. And he has a bunch of our wine and he is putting together a fun pairing. And we're going to try and do it. So you could eat it at the vineyard, but it will be semi-picnic style. So rather than having kind of all courses served and a lot of interaction, you'll get your whole meal at once, but it'll be ready to go. Details will come, but that's in the works. So just kind of fun things to think about in the next 6 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. Just keep an eye out. I think your emails will show them all. And then our next one of these happy hours, we're going to try and do them on the first Thursday of the month. So that's October 1st at 5:30. And the plan of the moment is to do more about sustainability and kind of growing and sort of what we do in the vineyard at the farm. And by then we should have a pretty good harvest update for you. We should be well underway. A month from now, we should have a lot to report on that. So I thought
you were about to say by then we should have a pretty good harvest.
Yes. Also,
okay.
I always say it's going to be a good harvest. So we will see. So I think that's the big topic for next time. As always, you can send us questions ahead of time if you have ideas for topics, but that is the plan, is to talk more about, and I think we'll get into grafting then if I missed anything on that, and just kind of what happens in the vineyard and what we try to do to I think we started with the soil, so we're going to try to move up into the plants a little bit. We'll probably talk about soil because we can't help ourselves, but there will be other things as well. So that is the plan. So thanks to all of you guys for putting up with all of our crazy hurricane, tornado, rain issues. I think we've got it covered. And I think we'll see you in a month.
That's great.
We're tornado warnings. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Pretty sure tornado